Hello, welcome back to BG Pythons. Firstly, a question. How many of you use something like this, a sprayer, to boost your humidity in your vivs? I've been using one for years and years, and it has sort of done the job to a degree. My concerns have been my regularity of doing them and keeping an eye on multiple vivs and cages, enclosures and things to make sure that the humidity is kept high, particularly with the bolins, the green tree pythons and the ball pythons. I have the added piece with this room that I have air conditioning, and the air conditioning seems to sort of sap the humidity out quite considerably. So I've been looking at a system that is a bit more automated. Now pretty much all of my enclosures, and in fact every enclosure, is quite well automated. I'm either using smart plugs or the microclimate Evo connects to turn the temperatures on or turn lights on and off. I have nothing that automates the misting of the vivs. So there are a few options out there and various products that different companies do, most of which through my own research, aren't brilliant. They're quite small, have quite small reservoirs, and probably not up for the job, certainly not up for the job for doing the majority of my vivs, if I so wish to do. So I've decided to go with MistKing. And the system I've decided to go with is the ultimate MistKing. This is the middle of the row product that they have, and you can do up to 20 nozzles, which is pretty good and will certainly suffice for my needs. Now, I'm not going to go fully out and do all of the vivs in one go. I'm just going to experiment with a couple of vivs, maybe 2 or 3 vivs initially, and see how I get on with that. And let's just have a look and see what comes in the box. So starting off, we have the MistKing little logo magnet. Always a good little addition, that. And generous amount of piping. Of course, you've got a little card as well with a QR code on it, so you can access videos and reference guides, which is really useful. Saves having a big little booklet to read through. Importantly, we've got the digital timer. I won't do a setup on that digital timer, but I will put a link down to MistKing's instructions down below in the description. The plug. Then we've got this drip valve, which stops any dripping going on, which is pretty useful. I don't think you get that on the starter, so I think that comes with the ultimate and the advanced system. The pump itself, and you get some nozzles. I'll come back to that in a second, and also a useful cutter for the pipe work, and a filter which will go within the reservoir. Now, please note it doesn't come with the reservoir, so that's something you will need to buy, and we'll come to what I'm going to be using for a reservoir in a minute. Okay, so hopefully you can see this is one of the nozzles, that comes with the MistKing system. They're pretty good quality and pretty straightforward to fit and everything. They also come with a little cap that goes at the end to protect the nozzle, which must make sure come off before I start the system, because otherwise it would be no good. But all you get with the ultimate is, oh, there we are, losing bits already. But you only get 3 of these, which is okay. I would have quite liked to have had the twin ones, because in the 5-foot vivs it would be quite nice to have the twin T versions of these. And I've just been online and found that they're nearly £30. so they're quite expensive. So I'm not going to get those immediately. I'm going to first of all get these installed and see what the performance is like. If it's actually adequate, which we'll know shortly, then I won't bother. But I'm thinking that having the T versions would be much better. Okay, so onto the setup. So I needed to get a reservoir, for which I've got a really useful box, as you can see here. It's a 25 litre really useful box, and I know many people, as I've mentioned before, would say it's better to have a dark plastic box rather than a transparent one. But the main reason I wanted transparent is because I want to, as part of this video, I want to be able to see how much water is used based on the program. So that's the main reason I've gone to. But actually it's quite a compact unit, which is quite useful. So let's start setting up all of the kit. The 25 litre really useful box is absolutely ideal because it's got a square side, so perfect for installing the bulkhead. I'm using a 16mm flat drill bit to drill a hole, which I'm doing about 1.5 inches from the bottom of the reservoir. Then I push the bulkhead through and put the rubber O-ring on. Then using my fingers, I just tighten the nut, do it finger tight, and then with the help of a couple of spanners, I just do sort of a couple of turns just to tighten it up a bit. And in order to check that this is watertight, MistKing have provided a plug, so you can add water and it goes in pretty easily, very simply, and it just stops any water pouring out. And as you can see, we have no leaking, which is a really good start. Now we can add the filter, which I cut a small piece of tube so this can be connected to the bulkhead. I then added the nozzles to the side of the viv. Remember, it's really important to take the caps off the ends before you start the whole machine up. Then I have attached the connectors along with the tubing, which I just cut to size using the cutters which are provided by MistKing. And it's just important to make sure the tubing is pushed in securely. The tubing was then connected to the pump, and the return goes into the zip drip, which is then attached into the pump. And then with everything all plugged in, I switch on the timer and it all lights up, which is ready for programming. Now, to check that everything's working perfectly fine, you simply press and hold the top right button on the timer, and hey presto, which is all working fine. A little bit of a surprise for the Bolin's pythons. So as you can see, it's working pretty well and I'm pretty pleased with it. I've only got it powering 2 nozzles just on these 2 vibs, and I'm going to see how that goes. I have programmed it in for 6 times a day. The programming is super easy. I'll put a link down in the description to MistKing's session on it, but I didn't even have to look at that. It was so easy to use. But as you can see, I've gone with a 7 o'clock, 9 a.m, 12 p.m, 2:30 p.m, 4:30 p.m, and 6:30 p.m. for a minute at a time. And what I'm finding is that the humidity is dropping to around the 50% mark, and when the humidity, when the MistKing system kicks in, it's boosting up to over 65%, which is perfect. I completely appreciate that I will be losing humidity, not just because of the air conditioning system, but also because I've got a large expanse of a large area of mesh. So I probably will reduce that a bit by covering it over. I made a little mark on the reservoir to see how much water was actually used during the 24-hour cycle of those 6 1-minute sessions, and it seemed to only drop by between half a centimetre and a centimetre, probably, if I'm being honest, about 0.8 centimetres, so not a great deal. Why that is really useful is obviously I can make sure there's enough water in there to cover if I'm away for periods of time and nobody needs to worry, and the container is big enough to probably cover me for quite some time, though I suspect I want to refresh the water quite regularly anyway, and it's nice and easy to do that. Now obviously I'm quite happy because the Boelen's pythons seem pretty happy with it at the moment. I'm going to look at buying some additional nozzles and some additional piping so I can start feeding a few more of the vivs. So I will come back at a later video, probably in a few weeks' time, once I've installed those, and just to see and report back and see exactly how I've got on with those. But in summary, I would say I'm pretty pleased with it. Really easy to install. That's a big bonus. So hopefully it will save me a bit of time. I really like the fine mystic kind of producers. And I've got there's a little chart that they put on the box that sort of explains, but I think it's 50 microns. I'll just grab it from here. Yeah, let's just have a look at it. Yeah, here we go. It is. So we go, yeah, 50 microns. And I think what I was probably spraying using my sprayer was probably 400 microns. So quite a difference in the amount of water that's actually, yeah, as I say. So it's very extremely fine mist. It is quite relatively quiet. There is a bit of a noise, a bit of a pumping noise, but of course it's not on all the time. It's on for short periods of time. The bits that you pay a lot of money for these kits, and the quality is definitely there. So it's amazing quality. Probably, I think it's pretty much the best on the market in terms of quality. Thing is, all of the accessories and things are expensive, and I hadn't really thought about it, but only getting 3 nozzles in this kit when it's cost, you know, nearly £300. It's a lot of money to spend, and you only get 3 nozzles, bearing in mind it can do up to 20. So I think they're a bit stingy on that side of things, but it's business, let's face it. You know, that's they pull you in. You've got the kit, so you even though there's some aftermarket versions out there, I would probably always get the originals to make sure the system's working well. But that said, over time, maybe in a year or two, I would review back to see if it's still working correctly, and we can see from there. But I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful, and please don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell button. Doesn't cost you a thing. Really welcome your comments as well. I'm sure quite a few of you are pretty experienced on this stuff and have either had ups and downs with similar systems or still using the manual sort of system, which, let's face it, is the cheapest way of going, and just using a sprayer and things like that. But I'd be really interested to hear your comments. Anyway, thanks again, and speak to you all soon.